President Biden and the First Lady hosted the White House Easter egg roll. At one point, the Easter Bunny joined Biden on the White House balcony. Biden came out and said, "Look, I know I'm mentally stable, but everyone else can see this 6-foot bunny next to me, right? I just want to make sure that's real, right? It's real?"
Yes. Sometimes we look toward the future and there is, if there's a bright light coming from the future, you don't need shades because it's the afterlife coming at you. It's that light. Oh, that light. Our future is so bright because we're raising, for example, Gen Z. I've got a good Gen Z story and a not so good Gen Z story today. It doesn't look like we're raising the greatest generation. I think communist China is very happy to see what's going on here. Vlad the Impaler Putin, the Ayatollahs, very happy indeed to see what's happening in the United States of America, thanks to the liberal left, the Democrat Party. Not raising manly men. Masculinity is toxic. Only in the United States. But I was reminded of a juxtaposition that I think is worthy of pointing out. In the newspaper this morning, the Washington Post, which is filled with drivel and propaganda and Democrat Party falsehoods, because it's just a front group for the party. It's, their slogan is, "It looks like a newspaper, but it's not." But it's not. Their front page above the fold today, "Inside the ruins of Al-Shifa Hospital." It's another pro-Hamas front page show with a big photograph here. And those terrible Jews trying to defend themselves from the genocidal death cult that is Hamas, funded by Iran. Oh, and also a fun whack job, if you will, on an Iranian leader, an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leader, got blowed up by Israel. And some people with Jose Andres Kitchen, they were in Damascus, Syria, for some inexplicable reason, were killed as well. And that's what the news media is focusing on. But their front page above the fold with a big picture is inside the ruins of Al-Shifa Hospital, which was being used as a terrorist headquarters, just as the Israelis had always said, and the Washington Post, But their real lead story today is Trump ramps up his attacks. See, Joe Biden is not attacking anybody. He's nice. He's real nice. The Democrats never attack anybody. Trump ramps up his attacks. I got to tell you, maybe the roughest job in politics has got to be, I think, President Trump's security detail. That's not a job for everybody. But let me get to this juxtaposition of the Gen Z thing and, the team at LSU walking off the court last night before the American national anthem was played. That's what the Democrats are raising in the United States of America. They're raising generations of anti-American Americans. All right? It's like Flint with James Coburn, where they trained the anti-American eagle. And a bald eagle sees Americans, can detect them and attacks them. It's a comedy. It's a satire movie, but it's funny. And the Democrats are raising anti-American Americans. On the LSU girls basketball team, which thankfully went down in flames last night. The anti-American young women from the LSU basketball team can expletive deleted, and I'll just leave it at that. But I'm glad they lost. I was rooting for Iowa and Caitlin Clark anywhere. I don't care what anybody says. I'm rooting for her and for Iowa, and it was great. It was great to watch. And LSU, we did watch the whole game, and it was a lot of fun. And LSU, they didn't show the part where LSU didn't show up for the anthem. They walked off the court. They weren't on the court for the national anthem. And the coach, who's kind of an interesting woman, made excuses for him, but no excuse will do. Sorry, lady. But here's an important story about a moment in American history. The New York Post has the story. Last survivor of Japanese attack on USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor, Lou Conter, Conter, dies at 102. 102-year-old Lou Conter, the last surviving crew member from the USS Arizona, the dastardly Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, that thrust America into World War II, thus changing the trajectory of human history forever. My father fought in World War II. 16.5 million Americans fought in World War II. And we smashed Japanese imperialism in the Pacific, and we smashed Adolf Hitler's Socialist Workers' Party in Europe. And those were good things. We smashed them. Then the Soviet Union had to be held at bay. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics had to be held at bay. And Joseph Stalin, the second most prolific mass murderer in history. Adolf Hitler, probably the third most prolific mass murderer in history. Number one, of course, being Mao Zedong, the Chinese communist leader, dictator, who murdered more people than anybody else in the history of the world. It's socialism. It's going to bring about utopia. The Democrats are still trying to sell it. All right? But let me get back to Lou Conter here. Last survivor, Japanese attack on the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. Lou Conter dies at 102. There's a photograph of him here from 2002, about a year and a half ago, and he looks like he's in his 60s. The guy could pass for, 68, 69 years old, and he just looks amazing. And there he is with some of his coins, his challenge coins behind him, wearing a Hawaiian shirt with a version of the USS Arizona on it. I had I think I still have it maybe, a Hawaiian shirt with the USS Missouri, the battleship Missouri on it, which I got in Hawaii, I believe. So the surprise bombing killed 1,177 sailors and Marines aboard the ship. Nearly half of the 2,403 Americans killed in the attack, which led the U.S. to head into battle in World War II. Now, Conter, who enlisted at the age of 18, was a quartermaster aboard the Arizona and was standing on the main deck when Japanese planes dropped bombs on the U.S. port in Hawaii just before 8 a.m. that Sunday morning. So he went on to tell his story again and again, wrote an autobiography, the Lou Conter story, and just amazing stuff, and did an oral history in 2008 of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and remarkable story. And he spent decades in the U.S. Navy, a remarkable man, Lou Conter, and died at the age of 102, still looking like, maybe he's 70 years old. Just remarkable. Guy's in good shape, and remarkable story. So that is what we came to know as the greatest generation, right? The World War II generation. And he went on to a brilliant career in the Navy, and decades a great American hero, and remarkable story. Then you go to today. That's the greatest generation. Then you go to today, and there was a story that made us laugh out loud this morning because Gen Z, these Gen Z people, Gen Z say that they need a therapist. Here's from left-wing CNBC. Gen Zers say they're going to need a therapist. Why? Why, you ask? To deal with tax filing stress. Not exactly, Pearl Harbor aboard the Arizona. 25% of Gen Zers say they'll need a therapist to deal with tax filing stress. Here's the first step to take to make it easier. That's the actual headline, that Gen Z is so traumatized by the idea that they might have to fill out a tax form. I understand it's complicated, but, they've been raised to love the government and then live in terror of everything. So taxes aren't enjoyable for people of any age, but they can be particularly stressful for younger generations. Why? Many of whom may have never filed before. Everybody files for the first time. That's the first time you file. In fact, 1 in 4 Gen Z taxpayers say they'll need a therapist to deal with the stress of tax filing season according to a recent Cash App Taxes survey. Additionally, 54% said filing taxes has either brought them to tears, right? In the past, filing taxes brought them to tears, or expect that filing taxes will bring them to tears this year. Yet the vast majority will vote Democrat again this year. Richard Pianoforte, managing director of Tax Fiduciary Trusts International, is surprised that the number isn't higher. He says, I have children in that age group, and I don't think they're prepared for it. School doesn't prepare them for it. It's totally understandable, he says. School didn't prepare me for tax season or paying taxes or giving up a fraction of my income or any of that. Just ridiculous. So there it is. The Gen Z people are going to need therapy because of tax season. Now, they should be in favor of simplifying the tax system, don't you think? But they've probably been told to believe that some people just aren't paying their fair share. And if they pay their fair share, then they wouldn't have to worry about it so much, because that's very tough. Now, there is some good news about Gen Z as well. And I like this one. It was the Wall Street Journal yesterday with a fun story, how Gen Z is becoming the tool belt generation. They're the tool belt generation. See, that's what does that mean? What does that tell you about them becoming the tool belt generation? They love Martina Navratilova. I don't know what that means. More young workers, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday, are going into trades as disenchantment with the college track continues and rising pay and new technologies shine up plumbing and electrical jobs. Now, this is actually a great news story, and it doesn't matter about which generation. I don't like the way we divide up, Gen Z and Gen X and and baby boomers, and you're just lucky to have us, and and blah blah blah. That's just another way of slicing and dicing the population and pitting groups against one another. But in any event, the Wall Street Journal wrote yesterday, America needs more plumbers, and Gen Z is answering the call. Long beset by a labor crunch, the skilled trades are newly appealing to the youngest cohort of American workers. I prefer employees, but that's me. People in the workforce. Workers, too Soviet for me, but it's everywhere now. Many of whom are choosing to leave the college path. Rising pay and new technologies in fields from welding to machine tooling are giving trade professions a facelift. This is great news and long overdue, helping them shed the image of being dirty, low-end work, right? Growing skepticism about the return on a college campus, going to college campus. It's good that there's skepticism about college campuses, the cost of which has soared in recent decades, is adding to their shine. Now, the great news here is, and I got to tell you, I was talking to someone the other day that has 2 kids in college right now, said both his kids are going to graduate with $250,000 in debt each. That's $500,000 in debt for 2 kids in college right now. And then it's going to take them, Joe Biden probably won't pay off all their debt with trillions of other people's dollars, but remarkable stuff. Now, these people, there's a pretty big increase in the number of people who are deciding not to go to college, but to go to community college or trade schools and to learn carpentry and metalwork and plumbing and welding and all these great skills where they say correctly they're going to be making $100,000 a year. They're going to be making 6 figures more quickly, $100,000 sooner by going into the trades than they would by going to a 4-year, and then they tell you, you need a master's degree, 5 years of college, 6 years of good. Hey, you need to go to law school, and then you're in debt for the rest of your life. All right. So this is great news. Gen Z saying college sucks. It costs too much. You don't learn anything of value. You spend your whole life paying it back, and you're miserable. And you become a plumber, and you buy your first house a lot sooner. And it's true. And you can end up owning your own company, your own business, be your own boss, employ other people, and do very well in the trades indeed. So that's great news. Now, it's like a 16% increase in 1 year, but that's big for 1 year. You know that Eden Pure is having their famous buy one, get one deal on the Eden Pure Thunderstorm Air Purifier. It's the BOGO deal. You know, buy one, get one. When you buy one Thunderstorm, you get one for free. No matter how many you buy, you get an equal number for free. You buy two, you get two for free. You see how this is going? You buy five, you get five for free. We have two at my house. The Thunderstorm will help completely eliminate any odor. Your home, your office, even the worst odors. Cigarette smoke, pets, litter boxes, cooking odors, even Michael Moore. The O3 molecules in the Eden Pure Thunderstorm seek out and destroy odors, even behind and under furniture. Nothing can hide from the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. And right now, well, it's the time to order. Eden Pure's buy one, get one free sale is for a limited time only, so don't wait. With thousands of 5-star reviews online, you know it works like a champ. People are buying several for around the home, to buy as gifts, to use in the office. Just go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code ChrisBOGO. Chris, B-O-G-O, buy one, get one. That's EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ChrisBOGO. Yes, sir. Yeah, so, honestly, I've got to say good for Gen Z, recognizing that college is a scam at this point. It's a ripoff. It really is. You're not getting out of it what they tell you you're getting out of it. You could buy a Rolls Royce instead. You could buy your first house for what you pay for college and start building generational wealth, or you can go be brainwashed and indoctrinated. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. The Washington Post has it's a half-page story in their A-sectional. Trump media stock plunges as Truth Social posts losses. And a Democrat named Drew Harwell from the DNC Steno pool typed up the story on behalf of his party, the Democratic Party. Former President Donald Trump's social media company said Monday it lost more than $58 million last year. Yeah, that's not a big dollar figure for him. Sending its stock plunging more than 21%. Now they go on and on here. And they say that the dip slashed the value of Trump's 57% ownership in the company by roughly $1 billion, down to $3.8 billion. So now with the big dip, he's only picked up $3.8 billion off of Truth Social. I was also going through the left-wing rag, the Washington Post today, and in the digest, these little 2-paragraph things that are throwaway stories that if they happen here, they'd be catastrophic, but because they're happening in beep hole countries, we pay no attention to them, and neither does the Washington Post. Out of Ecuador, that's south of our border, lots of people spilling into the United States from Ecuador. 9 killed, 10 injured in shooting attack. Sure. Gunmen attacked a group of people in Ecuador's coastal city of Guayaquil. My best girl and I have been to Guayaquil en route to the Galapagos Islands. We were in Guayaquil. Killing 9 and injuring 10 others, police said on Sunday. The latest violent incident in the South American country. The attacks took place Saturday evening. The southern neighborhood of Guasmo, according to police. A gray vehicle carrying gunmen came up and, entered a pedestrian street where they're not supposed to be driving. Group of people were practicing sports, probably kicking a soccer ball, but they don't say. The gunman got out of the vehicle, began shooting. Well, sure, that's how that goes. So, and then as a result, as of yesterday, 9 people dead and 10 injured. Now, these are the kinds of things that happen in beep hole countries, and it's why we were always happy to live in the United States of America. Because we didn't have that sort of stuff here. But the Democrats are importing that sort of stuff. We're going to have more and more of that sort of stuff. That is a straight up fact. You don't have to be Nostradamus or Gene Dixon to recognize that fact. That's just what the Democrats are doing to us. Open borders, unvetted millions of illegals from B-pole countries south of our border and all over the world, because Democrats are fundamentally transforming the United States of America. It will be unrecognizable as the United States of America by the time they get done implementing the Obama plan, which is the fundamental transformation of America. We all have to learn to speak Spanish and all that stuff. Now, let's get to, I've got cringe for you, cringe Jean-Pierre yesterday. I've got all kinds of good stuff. President Trump laying down his giant $175 million bond. The Washington Post mocking him because, oh, sure, now he's only up $3.8 billion on the sale of Truth Social. He lost $1 billion, which is normal when stock first, initial public offering and boom, and then it levels off a bit. Perfectly normal, perfectly predictable, but not on the Washington Post. Now let's go to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because this got a lot of attention, and rightly so. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was invited to go on CNN, even though they hate him because they are a Biden camp and a DNC camp. CNN is. They're not in the news business. They're in the Democrat Party front group business, the Democrat Party propaganda business. And the story is making all kinds of news with the left-wing media. Left-wing mediaite RFK Jr. suggests a, quote, worse threat to democracy, end quote, than Trump, that Biden is a worse threat to democracy than Trump. He's weaponizing the federal agencies. Well, he is, and I mentioned this earlier, one of the federal agencies that Joe Biden is weaponizing is the United States Secret Service, which is under the Treasury Department, and I guess now everything's under the Department of Homeland Security because we're Sovietizing the government, and we shouldn't, but we are. And he went on CNN, RFK Jr. did, and he was asked the wrong question. I think that's what happened. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suggested on Monday that President Biden was a worse threat to democracy than former President Donald Trump. And this has CNN and Mediaite and the rest of them really up in arms. After CNN anchor Aaron Burnett asked RFK Jr. whether he believes that the threat to democracy that Trump poses is equal evil to Biden. Equal evil to Biden. It's the threat. This is the Democrat Party issued talking point. Threat to democracy, right? Now, these are the people that were burning federal courthouses for weeks. In fact, the Mark Hatfield courthouse, I think they attacked for 100 days. The Democrat Party and their violent mobs. They're Antifa, which is a terrorist group founded in Germany in the 1930s that the Democrats have taken up here. Democrat Party gave us the KKK and the SDS and the Weather Underground and the Symbionese Liberation Army and all these terror groups. And now they're Antifa and Black Lives Matter, which is really just a shakedown racket more than anything. Talk about violating RICO statutes, but they won't be charged. Here's Aaron Burnett with RFK Jr. yesterday on CNN.
When people talk about the threat to democracy that Trump poses, do you really think that is an equal evil to Biden?
I mean, listen, I can make the argument that President Biden is a much worse threat to democracy. And the reason for that is President Biden is the first candidate in history, the first president in history that has used the federal agencies to censor political speech, so to censor his opponent.
To censor political speech. It is one of the hallmarks of dictatorial regimes. He could go on and on from there. And again, and she didn't ask him about denying Secret Service protection. But Joe Biden and the Democrats, look, the Obama-Biden administration used the IRS against their political enemies and were forced to pay millions and millions of dollars to the aggrieved parties, the Tea Party organizations and Patriot, if you use the word Patriot in your organization's title, then the IRS targeted you to keep you on the sidelines while Barack Obama was running for re-election and appointing a communist to be the CIA director, who then eventually abused the CIA to corrupt our presidential election. And, his job title as CIA director, and the others signed on to that felonious 51 letter that tampered with, meddled in our elections. Censorship is enormous. And it's true that only dictatorships and thugs censor their political enemies. Joe Biden has used the Justice Department, the FBI, Obama, Biden, the IRS against their political enemies. And I said earlier that the Biden White House is using the Secret Service against Robert F. Kennedy Jr., denying him Secret Service protection, which costs him in turn probably millions of dollars in security, not just hundreds of thousands, that would otherwise be applied to his campaign, which would be bad for Joe Biden. So the abuse of the Secret Service here is in denying Robert F. Kennedy's Secret Service protection. And he's a worse threat. Censorship is, the Democrats have normalized censorship by way of Twitter and Facebook, and the FBI was involved in nudging, pushing Facebook and Twitter and others to deny the American public access to the New York Post reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop on the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, and so on. RFK Jr.
I can say that because I just won a case in the Federal Court of Appeals and now before the Supreme Court. It shows that he started censoring not just me. 37 hours after he took the oath of office, he was censoring me. No president in the country has ever done that. The greatest threat to democracy is not somebody who questions election returns, but a president of the United States who used the power of his office to force the social media companies, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to open a portal and give access to that portal to the FBI, to the CIA, to the IRS, to CISA, to NIH, to censor his political critics.
To censor his political critics, his political opposition, to crush their free speech. And they most certainly did that. And he should be impeached for that. The Democrats would have impeached Trump for that 5 times. They would have done it in a heartbeat. RFK on CNN.
President Biden, for the first president in history, to use his power over the Secret Service to deny Secret Service protection to one of his political opponents for political reasons. He's weaponizing the federal agencies. Those are really critical threats.
They are, and Erin Burnett was gasping. She was slack-jawed. Her eyebrows were up in the air. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She thought probably correctly that she's going to get in trouble with her bosses at CNN for even allowing these things to be said without leaping across the lucite desk and strangling him. She wanted to grab him around the neck with her claws and pull him out of their chair. Just amazing. Erin Burnett.
Donald Trump, of course, tried to overturn a free and fair election. He tried to overturn one, right? He's still fighting in court.
Yes.
He's still fighting in court.
Not a threat to democracy?
Well, I think that is a threat to democracy. The question was, who is a worse threat to democracy? And what I would say is, I'm not going to answer that question, but I can argue that President Biden is, because the First Amendment, Aaron, is the most important.
And they're still doing this January 6th dance, which they have a psychosexual religious cult-like devotion to the Democrat Party's talking point. Now, there was no way that a group of people walking through the Capitol waving at the police, a guy with horns on his head, were going to stop the process in the Capitol that day or any other day. There was no way that was going to happen. And nobody can explain, none of these idiot Erin Burnett types can explain how exactly that would have happened. Yeah, there was a riot there, and police were assaulted, and people that assaulted police should be held accountable. People that walked through the Capitol after the door was held open by the Capitol Police shouldn't be held accountable for anything because they really didn't do anything that they should be held accountable for. And there was no threat to democracy or to overturning the election. That's all a lie. But they keep, like I played the ex-Democrat congressman, saying 5 Capitol police officers were killed on January 6th. They just lie and lie and lie and lie. And the news media is a big pack of liars. RFK Jr.
If you have a government that can silence its opponent, it has license for any atrocity.
So just to be clear, you're saying you could make an argument that President Biden is a worse threat to democracy than Donald Trump. That's what you just said.
But who else has ever tried to censor? What president in history has ever tried to censor political opponents? What president has weaponized the federal agency?
Federal agency after federal agency, the Justice Department. I mean, honestly, the Department of Homeland Security, the raids on Donald Trump's associates' homes, the Peter Navarro, who's in prison right now in Florida, who was arrested at Reagan National Airport and had leg shackles put on him, who was talking to the FBI hours before they arrested him, saying, well, you want me to come down to headquarters? I can walk down there from where I live. No problem. I'll be down. And instead, they spied on him, found out he had a flight, went to Reagan Airport and arrested him publicly with cuffs and leg shackles. And then they threw him in prison. And he's in prison right now for allegedly doing something that is exactly what Hunter Biden is doing right now and did, and that is denying a congressional subpoena. But Peter Navarro had executive privilege to fall back on because he was an advisor to the President of the United States, and that's what executive privilege is for. Now, that was the CNN go-round. Then RFK this morning went on the Fox News channel at about 8:30 a.m., and I was watching for you because, he's talking, is like, hey, look at all this stuff that RFK said on CNN yesterday. Let's get him on Fox and ask him about that.
The First Amendment was put in the Constitution. Madison, Hamilton had it, said we put it, free expression, to guarantee the First Amendment, because all the other rights are dependent on it. If you have a president who can censor his political opponents, right, he has the license for any kind of atrocity. That is a genuine threat to our democracy.
How dare you say that denying people their rights from the White House and for political purposes is RFK?
Undermining the First Amendment of our Constitution and then weaponizing the federal agencies to get his opponents off the ballot. And in my case, I just say particularly, denying me Secret Service protection. That's never happened in history.
Denying Secret Service protection to a candidate because he's a thorn in the side of the White House.
It feels like people want somebody telling them the truth. They believe that the government lies. And which is true. If you don't think the government's lying to you, you're not paying attention. And this isn't, the government did not always lie to the American public. I remember when I was a kid, 80% of Americans believed that the government would never lie to them.
Well, and that was probably not true even when you were a kid, that the government would never lie to you. But now the government has become a lie machine. It's like you've heard of like the Laugh Factory. This is the lie factory, and the lies are so gigantic. I talk about it all the time, and I got to tell you, I was in news media, straight news media. This city I grew up in, straight news media, was not always like this. It's not always been like this. It's completely different now than it was. Just honestly, the beginning was the Obama administration. Where it really went off the rails in this country was the beginning of the Barack Obama administration. And the abuses of power, because, Barack Obama's not a liberal, he's a leftist. His mentor was Frank Marshall Davis, a card-carrying communist. He appointed Barack Obama a Communist Party voter, John Brennan, to be the director of the CIA. John Brennan and 50 of his co-conspirators corrupted the 2020 presidential election, abusing their power and their position. We pay them to meddle in elections in other countries, not our country. But our government is worse, more corrupt, more dishonest than certainly I've ever seen it. And I think more than Joe Biden's ever seen it. He's seen a lot more than me. A story has broken out of the Daily Pennsylvanian, which is the school newspaper, the college newspaper at the University of Pennsylvania, that Joe Biden sent email after email after email about his grandchild's admittance to the Ivy League university, the University of Pennsylvania. his granddaughter and her application process. Now, didn't a couple of actresses just go to prison for tampering with the, was that Lori Loughlin? Lori Loughlin was one of them. She did 2 months in prison. She pled guilty, charges involving her role in the admissions scandal. Said Loughlin and her husband, Massimo Giannulli, paid $500,000 in bribes to get their daughters into college as crew team recruits. And they went to prison. What, you can't pay to get your kid into college? Isn't that what college is all about? Paying to get your kid into college? That's the whole point of colleges even existing at this point, isn't it? Just extraordinary. And here's Joe Biden with a string of emails, email after email, to the president of the college, Amy Gutmann, of the university, to get the granddaughter in. And, he's the president of the United States, and he was the vice president. He's a senator, and he used to pretend to be a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, where he never taught a class. But
when I left the United States Senate, I became a professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
Liar.
And I've spent a lot of time, and the University of Delaware has the Biden School there as well.
Yeah, they teach dumb. That's I got majored in dumb. Majored in don't know what's going on, being wrong about everything for 40 years. And they've got a school named after him. That can't be good. Yeah, and he claimed that he was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, never taught a class, but they paid him anyway. And now the Daily Pennsylvanian with their story, the emails sent over several years, interactions between Biden and the then president of the university, Amy Gutmann, a Democrat, the dean of admissions, Eric Furda. And if he were an actress in California, I guess he'd go to prison for this. But since you're a Democrat and you're living in the White House, and we live in a very corrupt country, our country is very corrupt. Amazing. January 4th of 2023, Lori Loughlin released from prison after serving 2-month sentence in college admissions scandal. But there will be no college admissions scandal here because corruption is now normal in the United States of America, and the Democrats run the corruption show. It's one thing they're good at.